Good day everyone, I am Rosalyn Pajulas and today we're going to tackle about the institutional correction. So we are now in module 2. So what we're going to discuss today is the history, philosophy, and objectives of imprisonment and the development of prison. So we have the Sing Sing Correctional Facility. Sing Sing Correctional Facility is a maximum security prison operated by the New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision in Ossining, New York. It houses about 1,700 incarcerated people and is located about 30 miles north of New York City on the back of Hudson River. So the Sing Sing prison was used in 1826 and it is the one of the oldest penal institution in the United States. It is also among the most well-known in the country, especially notable for its harsh condition in the 19th and 20th century. The name Sing Sing was derived from the Saint Sing Indian tribe from whom the land was purchased in 1685 and was formerly the name of the village. Sing Sing was the fifth prison constructed by New York State authorities. In 1824, the New York legislature gave Elam Lades, warden of Auburn Prison and a former United States Army captain, the task of constructing a new, more modern prison. In total, 614 men and women, including 4 inmates under federal death sentences, were executed by electric chair of Sing Sing until the abolition of the death penalty in 1972. After a series of escapes from the death row, a new death house was built in 1920 and began execution in 1922. In 1972, the United States Supreme Court ruled in Foreman v. Georgia that the death penalty was unconstitutional if its application was inconsistent and arbitrary. This led to a temporary de facto nationwide moratorium, but the electric chair of Sing Sing remained. In the early 1970s, the electric chair was moved to Green Haven Correctional Facility in working condition, but was never used again. Here are some wardens in Sing Sing Prison. We have Thomas Mott Osborne, was an American prison administrator, prison reformer, industrialist, and New York State political reformer. And then we have Lewis Edward Leaves, was a prison warden and a proponent of prison reform. During his 21 years of Sing Sing Correctional Facility, he supervised the execution of 303 prisoners. Captain Elam Lades was a prison warden. He helped create the Auburn system, which consisted of congregate labor during the day and isolation at night starting in 1821 and was warden of Sing Sing from 1830. Maximum security prison. As grades of the high security level used by prison system in various countries which pose a higher level of security to prevent prisoners from escaping and from doing harm to other inmates or security guards. So maximum security prison have a heavy doors that are used to keep the inmates locked in the cells. They have a window to see out of and a slot for the food tray to go in and out of. The doors are operated by a prison guard at a control center. Because these criminals have a violent criminal history or have committed violent crime while incarcerated. Medium security prisons still have quite a bit of security measures in place. The inmates are housed in their own cells, but they have more opportunities to leave them. The medium security prisons, the inmates are locked in their cells each night and bed check, and an inmate counts is conducted to make sure each inmate is in their proper cell. The outside of the prison isn't as secure as the maximum, but it's still pretty hard to imagine someone escaping. Medium security prisons have double fences instead of the triple fences. The minimum security prison have at least amount of security. Not all inmates are confined behind the walls, the prison walls. In a maximum security prison, some inmates are allowed to work in work camps outside the prisons, which are supervised by prison guards. We have Thomas Mott Osborne, was an American prison administrator, prison reformer, industrialist, and New York State political reformer. So, Osborne's life, a New York Times book reviewer wrote, his career as a penologist was short, but in the interval of the few years he served succeeded in revolutionizing American prison reform. If not always in fact, then in the awakening responsibility, he was made of this particular staff of martyrs. To many people perhaps ridiculous, but to those whose lives his theories must closely touch, inspiring and often godlike. So in 1933, the Welfare League Association and several other organizations Osborne had created were merged and reorganized as Osborne Association. The association now works at every point of the criminal justice system, from arrest and pre-entry to programs in prison and the community following release. So we have the Sing Sing prison cell. In 1901, the residents of Sing Sing village changed its name to Ossining. They wanted to distance, if not disassociate, the town from the notorious prison. For the same reason, in 1970, the state renamed the prison Ossining Correctional Facility. So as you can see at the picture, this is the Sing Sing prison cell. Osborne Association. The Osborne Association is a non-governmental multi-services criminal justice reform and direct service organization. Osborne offers programs for people who have been in conflict with the law and their families. It operates from community offenses in Brooklyn. So the Osborne's mission is to serve individuals, families, and communities affected by the criminal justice system. Through their programs, they offer opportunities for people to heal from and repair harm, restore their lives and thrive. They challenge system-rooted in racism and retribution and fight for policies and practices that promote true safety, justice, and liberation. In 1913, Thomas Mott Osborne, an industrialist former mayor of Auburn, New York, voluntarily spent a week in prison. After his experience, Osborne committed himself to reform the American prison system from society's scrap heap into a human repair shop, to emphasize rehabilitation rather than punishment. Dedicated to the idea of criminal justice system that restores of society the largest number of intelligent, forceful, honest citizens. Portsmouth Naval Prison. Portsmouth Naval Prison is a former U.S. Navy and Marine Corps prison on the grounds of the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. The building has the appearance of the castle. The reinforced concrete naval prison was occupied from 1908 until 1974. So, as you can see at the picture, that is the Portsmouth Naval Prison. Juvenile. An individual under the age of 18 is considered a juvenile. Anyone who is not of the legal age is never locked up in the general prison with adults. They are instead placed in a facility that is designed exclusively for juveniles. Juveniles, also known as youth detention, for people who also under the age of 21, often term to which they have been sentenced and committed for a period of time, or detained on a short-term basis while awaiting trial or placement in a long-term care program. So Eliza Farnham was a 19th century American novelist, feminist, abolitionist, and activist for prison reform. She was appointed matron of the women's ward at Sing Sing prison. She strongly believed in the use of phrenology to treat prisoners. So Eliza Farnham was influential, changing the types of reading materials available to women prisoners. The purpose of her choices was not entertainment but improving behavior. She also advocated using music and kindness and the rehabilitation of female prisoners. So that is Eliza Farnham. Prison Administration. The Administrative Division of Prison provides a range of services to support the Department of Corrections and officers working in the prison. These services can include budgeting, management, overseeing policies and procedures, and conducting audits. The responsibilities of prison administration is that all correctional officers in some ways must perform administrative tasks as a part of their jobs. For example, they need to write reports and fill out daily logs about inmate behavior and anything notable that occurred during the work shift. Some correctional officers, however, solely perform administrative tasks. American Correctional Association, or ACA, is called the National Prison Association. It's a private, non-profit, non-governmental trade association and accrediting body for the correction industry, the oldest and largest such association in the world. The organization was founded in 1870 and has significant place in the history of prison reform in the U.S. So we have the Green Haven Correctional Facility. It's a maximum security prison in New York. The prison is located in the town of Beekman in the Dutchess County. The New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision lists the addresses of Route 216 Stormwell NY 12568. So, this prison housed New York's execution chamber during the time the state briefly had the death penalty. In the post-Foreman era, every facility has a variety of programs to help incarcerated individuals, which can include alcohol and substance abuse treatment programs, anger management programs, educational vocational programs, family development programs, guidance and counseling services, library and law library services, recreational programs, religious services, sex offender treatment programs, temporary release programs, trauma programs, transitional services programs, veteran services, volunteer services, and program services. So, Gustave de Beaumont. Comte Gustave Auguste Bonin de la Benorie de Beaumont was a French magistrate, prison reformer, and travel companion to the famed philosopher and politician Alexis de Tocqueville. While he was very successful in his lifetime, he is often overlooked and his name is synonymous with Tocqueville's achievements. So Beaumont spent his early years in the Château de la Borte in his birthplace. In 1826, Beaumont acquired the position of King's Prosecutor at Tribunal de Premier Instance of Versailles. It was during the tenure of his first mate, Alexis de Tocqueville, they are become friends, although Beaumont's eloquence and verve contrasted greatly with Tocqueville's bad rhetoric and asocial behavior. The two stayed close even when Beaumont was appointed to Paris in 1929 and they were separated for a time. So the cat o nine tails. The cat o nine tails, commonly shortened to the cat, is type of multi-tailed whip that originated as the implement for severe physical punishment, notably in the Royal Navy and British Army, and as a judicial punishment in Britain and some other countries. So, the term first appears in 1681, reports of London murder. The term came from into wider circulation in 1695, play Love for Love, although the design is much older. So the cat o nine tails is a whip. It consists of 9 pieces of cord, each tied with a series of knots. The device traditionally punished sailors in the British Royal Navy by whipping their bare backs. It is thought that cat o nine tails got his name from the stretches to lift on a man's back. So, as you can see at the picture, there are 9 pieces of cord. So, this is the one This is the they use this as a punishment of the prisoner. So they are whipping the bare backs of the offender. The various exist either name cut or not, such as the whip used on adult Egyptian prisoners which had a cord on a cudgel bashing into 7 tails, each with 6 knots and used only on adult men, with boys being subject to caning until Egypt banned the use of the device in 2001. Sometimes the term cut is used incorrectly to describe various other punitive flogging devices with multiple tails in any number, even one made from 8 wings. So naval types and use. The naval cut weighed about 370 grams and was composed of handle connected to 9 thinner pieces of line, which is line knotted several times along its light formal flaggings. This ordered by captain or court martial were administered ceremonial or deck, the crew being summoned to witness punishment, the prisoner being brought forward by marines with a fixed bayonet. So, as you can see at the picture, that man, that new T-shirt, that is the prisoners that they punish them through the cut o 9 tails. They're whipping at the back of that prisoners as a punishment. So Thomas Alva Edison, was an American inventor and businessman. He developed many devices in fields such as electric power generation, mass communication, sound recording, and motion pictures. This invention was include the phonograph, the motion picture camera, an early version of the electric light bulb, have had widespread impact on the modern industrialized world. He was one of the first inventors to apply the principle of organized science and teamwork to the process of invention, working with many researchers and employees. He established the first industrial research laboratory. So, Edison is he also created the electric chair. So the electric chair, as you all know, the that is the one of the punishment used by the Sing Sing prison. So electric chair execution by electrocution performed using an electric chair. The method of execution originated in the United States in which the condemned person is strapped. So the prisoner will be seated in that chair and strapped to a specially built wooden chair and electrocuted to the electrodes fastened. So they fasten the prisoner on the head and legs. This execution method, conceived in 1881 by a Buffalo, New York dentist named Alfred P. Southwick, was developed throughout the 1880s as a supposed human alternative to hanging and first used in 1890. So, although the electric chair has long been a symbol of the death penalty in the United States, its use in decline due to the risk of lethal injection, which is widely believed to be more human than method of execution. But some states still maintain electrocution as a legal method of execution. Today, it is only maintained as a secondary method that may be chosen over lethal injection and the request of the prisoner, except in Tennessee and South Carolina, where it may be used without input from the prisoner if the drugs for literal injection are not available. So, Auburn State Prison. The Auburn system is a penal method of the 19th century in which prisons worked during the day in groups and were kept in a solitary confinement at night, with enforced silence at all times. The silence system evolved during the 1820s at Auburn Prison in Auburn, New York, as an alternative to a modification of the Pennsylvania system of solitary confinement, which is gradually replaced in the United States. Whigs favored this system because it promised to rehabilitate criminals by teaching them personal discipline and respect for work, property, and other people. So the Auburn State Prison during the 19th century, prisoners had no rights nor any opportunity to live semi-comfortably. The Auburn system established several characteristics that were unique to the world of disciplinary conclusions. Silence was the biggest factors among the rules for the prisoner. So we have to be silent. In 1821 was a new principal keeper. Elam Lads was appointed to run the prison. He believed in the disciplinary power and the lash, and used flogging to punish even minor infractions. In 1839, a prisoner died from neck-lick and over-flogging. The Committee of Auburn and other staff members of the Auburn Theological Seminary petitioned to bring the issue of the punishment to the state government. The law stated that 6 blows on the neck, back with a cut, or 6-stranded whip was the most punishment that could be assigned for any other offense. In the early days of the prison, women inmates were held in the windowless attic atop the high-security prison. They shared a single room and slept in the same area where they worked primarily at picking wool, knotting, and spooling. In 1838, all women prisoners were transferred to the new female wing at Sing Sing. In 1892, the women returned to a new building at the Auburn Prison. The Auburn Women's Prison remained in operation until 1933 with a new maximum security wing for female inmates opened at Bedford Hills. Prison, also known as a jail or gaol. Standard English, Australian, and historically in Canada. Penitentiary, detention center, correction center, correctional facility, lock-up or remain center is a facility in which inmates a variety of freedoms under the authority of the state is punishment for the system. People change with the crimes and may imprisoned until the trial. Those pleading for being found guilty of crimes and trial may be sentenced to a specified period of imprisonment. So, solitary confinement. Solitary confinement is a form of imprisonment distinguished by living in the single cells with little or no meaningful contact with other inmates, strict measure to control contraband, and the use of additional security measures and equipment. It is specifically designed for disruptive inmates who are security risks to other inmates. The prison staff or the prison itself, but can also be used as a measure of protection for inmates whose safety is threatened by other inmates or as a form of disciplinary punishment. Solitary confinement. According to the UN, solitary confinement is for 15 days or more is considered torture that can cause permanent psychological damage, but prisons in the United States still use these special housing units, aka the SHU. The practice of solitary confinement traces its origins back to the 19th century, with Quakers in Pennsylvania used this method as a substitutional for public punishment. John Decree. John Decree, a deputy warden at the Auburn prison, said silence took away the prisoners' sense of self, which made them more obedient. Thus, the prisoners did everything without talking. The congregate system had them together for many activities and meals, all of which were done in silence. At night, they were in their cell alone. Despite the silence, the inmates worked together as they made items like barrels, buckets, clothes, shoes, boots, and tools and saddles. These were sold at a profit, making the Auburn system the first to wade into the prison manufacturing industry that became popular in the 1800s. Auburn Theological Seminary. located in New York City, teaches students about progressive social issues by offering workshops, providing consulting, and conducting research in faith leadership development. So the Auburn Theological Seminary is the only research center in U.S. focused on the study of seminaries, divinity schools, and the preparation of faith leaders working for social justice. It was one of the first seminaries in the country to admit African Americans, Japanese, and later female seminarians. So the Auburn Theological Seminary houses the only research center in the U.S. focused on the study of seminaries, divinity schools, and preparation for faith leaders in working social justice. So Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women. So Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women is a prison in Bedford Hills, New York. It is the largest women's prison in New York State. The prison previously opened under the name Westfield State Farm in 1901. Bedford Hills is one of several New York facilities exclusively for women, the others being Albion Correctional Facility and Taconic Correctional Facility. Its family-centered program, Bedford Hills, founded by Sister Elaine Rollett, has served as a model of another prison program in the United States and is considered the standard for innovative family-centered programs. So, as you can see in the picture, that is the Bedford Hills Correctional. So, it is only for women. This prison is for only for women, and it's the largest prison for women. So Foreman v. Georgia. Foreman v. Georgia was a criminal case in which the United States Supreme Court invalidated all death penalty schemes in the United States in a 5-4 decision, with each member of the majority writing a separate opinion. Following Foreman, in order to reinstate the death penalty, states that the list remove arbitrary and discriminatory effects in order to satisfy the 8th Amendment in the U.S. Constitution. Ohio Reformatory for Women. Ohio Reformatory for Women is a state prison for women owned and operated by the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction in the Marysville. So in 1961, Clearview School opened at a prison, and the Ohio Reformatory for Women became the first in the state to have an official adult education program. Along with this, they also offered reintegration programs, college classes, and other trades. It took about 4 years to construct the prison, which is located in 260 kilometers of the native land outside the city of Marysville. Originally, the prison consisted of one stone building known as the Harmon Building. The prison was also a functioning farm, complete with dairy, cattle, hogs, and grain which the inmates ran. Although ORW no longer operates as a farm, it is still commonly referred to as the farm. A former probation and juvenile court officer, Louise M. Mittendorf, was the first superintendent of the prison. She was appointed in March 1916 to an indefinite term. She resigned in 1935 and died 4 years later. Franklin Pre-Release Center. Franklin Pre-Release Center is located in Ohio. Each correctional facility has its own rules on visitation, commissary, and mail. These facilities also guidelines to follow. Before connecting with a loved one here, you can find them using a free inmate locator for Franklin Pre-Release Center. So, what is inmate commissary? Prison commissary is a storehouse within correctional facility, while the very most basic must be provided for by a given correctional department. There are also other important and good services that Ohio prisoners must buy. For instance, Supplies such as supplementary food, female hygienic books, writing utensils, and a plethora of other things or example of things that can purchase as part of commissary package for goods. Northeast Pre-Release Center. Northeast Reintegration Center is a minimum security prison located in Cleveland, Ohio. It houses approximately 605 minimum and medium security female inmates, even though Northeast Reintegration Center was constructed to have a maximum capacity of 350 inmates. All inmates who are housed here are required to sign an agreement to participate in extensive rehabilitation programming ranging from academic courses to mental health treatment. Northeast Reintegration Center is also rated one of the safest facilities in all the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction. So, Elaine Roulette. Sister Elaine Roulette was a Roman Catholic sister who created programs that connect incarcerated mothers and their children. She was instrumental in the prison reform movement and established the precedent of connecting prison mothers with their babies, and may United States prisons now use as a model. Albion Correctional Facility. Albion Correctional Facility is a medium security women's prison in Albion, New York, United States. Is operated by the New York State Department of Correctional Services. The site was founded in 1894 as the Western House of Refuge for Women, then later the Albion State Training School. Albion is one of New York facilities exclusively for women, the others being Belford Hills Correctional Facilities, Tacony Correctional Facilities, most famously Auburn House, Long Island, Loleta, Amy Fisher for 3.5 years. She was then transferred to the Belford Hills Correctional Facility to women. Tacony Correctional Facility. Tacony Correctional Facility is a minimum security women's prison in the Bedford Hills, New York, that is operated by the New York State Department of Corrections. It is associated with Bedford Hills Correctional Facilities. Facilities has capacity to hold 387 individuals. August Rebellion. The August Rebellion refers to a 1974 uprising for the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for women. A New York State prison in Bedford Hills is the town of Bedford, Westchester County, New York, United States. In August 1974, about 200 women imprisoned at Bedford Hills rebelled, taking over parts of the prison in protest in the inhuman treatment of Carol. So Crooks filed lawsuit challenging the placement of women in solitary confinement without a 24-hour notice of prison disciplinary charges, hearings, and the reason of the punishment. Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment is the part of the Bill of Rights. It prohibits unreasonable searches and seizures. In addition, it requires for issuing warrants must be issued by the judge or magistrate, justified by probable cause supported to oath or affirmation, and most particularly describe the place to be searched and the persons or to be seized. So, in Fourth Amendment was adopted in response to the abuse of the writ of assistance, a type of general search warrant issued by the British government and major source of tension pre-revolutionary America. The Fourth Amendment was introduced in the Congress in 1789 by James Madison along with other amendments in the Bill of Rights. So, because of the Bill of Rights did not initially apply to state or local governments, and federal criminal investigation were less common in the first century and the nation's history, there is little significant case law for the Fourth Amendment before 20th century. So, home. Searches and search inside the home without a warrant presumptively unreasonable. However, there are some exceptions. A warrantless search may be lawful if an officer is given cogent to search, if there is probable cause to search, and exigent circumstances. A prison, when an officer observes unusual conduct which leads him reasonably to the conclude that criminal activity may be afoot, the officers may briefly stop the suspicious person and make reasonable inquiries aimed at confirming or dispelling the other's suspicions. So school officials need to obtain a warrant before searching student who is under their authority. Rather, a search of a student would only be reasonable under all the circumstances. Cars, where there is probable cause to believe that a vehicle contains evidence of a criminal activity, an officer may lawfully search area of the vehicle in which the evidence might be found. An officer may conduct a traffic stop if he has activity in foot. An officer may conduct a pat down on the river and driver and passenger during the any occupant of the vehicle involved in criminal activity. Charles Pratt, first Earl Camden. Charles Pratt, first Earl Camden, was an English lawyer, judge, and Whig politician who was first to hold the title of Earl Camden. As a lawyer and judge, was a leading proponent of civil liberties. He held the offices of Chief Justice of the Common Pleas, Attorney General, and Lord High Chancellor in the Great Britain. Was a confidant during his life. Pratt played a leading role in opposing perpetual copyright, resolving the Regency crisis of 1788, and in a champion Saturn development settlement has later to become Camden Town in London. A prison cell is a small room, a prison or police station where a prisoner is held. Cells greatly vary by the furnishing, hygienic services, and cleanliness, both across countries and based on level of punishment to which the person being held has been sentenced. Cells can be factors that include but are not limited to inmate population, facilities, size, resources, or inmate behavior. So, William Penn was an English writer and religious thinker belonging to the Religious Society of France and founder of Providence, Pennsylvania, North American colony of England. He was early advocate of democracy and religious freedom, notable for his good relation and successful treaties with the Lenape Native Americans. So William Penn immediately set sail and took his first step on American soil, sailing up the Delaware Bay and Delaware River. However, Penn's Quaker government was not viewed favorably by the previous Dutch and Swedish colonists and early English settlers in which is now Delaware, but claimed for half a century for the neighbors province Maryland's proper formally. Different types of criminal punishment. The types of criminal punishment. The types of punishment listed by the University of Oxford Handbook include the first four of the following. The idea of restorative justice is newer. Today's expert in criminology see it was a valid criminal punishment option. Those who judge the types of crimes and their punishment typically use one of the following approaches to guide them. So retribution is the one of the punishment. Is one of the first form of punishment, essentially the idea of an eye for an eye. Those who favor retribution believe it gives the victims of crime, of societies as a whole, and sense of satisfaction knowing a criminal received the appropriate level of punishment for the crime committed. Lawmakers face the task of determining these appropriate levels of punishment, which, which can range from speeding ticket fine amounts to mandatory sentence for certain crimes. And then we have the deterrence. Deterrence aims to prevent future crime and can focus on specific and general deterrence. Specific deterrence deals with making individuals less likely to commit a future crime because of fear of getting similar or worse punishment. So rehabilitation. Rehabilitation seeks to prevent future crime by allaying criminal behavior. This typically includes offering a house program while in prison, including educational and vocational programs. So, incapacitation. This is another ASEAN approach that remains popular. Incapacitation simply means removing the person from society. This includes incarceration in persons' houses, arrest, and in this more therefore execution. Many feel the flaw in this approach is that it doesn't address rehabilitation or recidivism, the latter of which leads to remain high in societies that practice incapacitation. Restoration. The new approach to criminal justice calls for the offender to make direct amends to the victim of their crimes as well as the community where the crime occurred. Judges are the approach mostly with juvenile offenders in the victim says about his experience with the crime committed. Forms of punishment. Punishment's infliction of some kind of pain or loss upon a person for a misdeed. Punishment may take forms ranging from capital punishment, flogging, forced labor, and mutilation penalties and are imposed only if an offense is repeated within a period time. In some pre-modern societies, punishment was largely vindictive or retributive, and its processation was left to the individual's wrong in quantity and in quality such as punishment. So forms of punishment. See capital punishment, flogging, exile, and banishment, and drawing or quartering. Capital punishment is so-called death penalty execution of an offender sentenced to death after conviction by a court of law on criminal offense. Capital punishment should be distinguished from extrajudicial execution carried to without the due process. Capital punishment for murder, treason, arson, and rape was widely employed in ASEAN Greece under the laws of Traco. So followers of Judaism and Christianity, for example, have claimed to find justification for capital punishment in biblical passage. Yet capable punishment has been prescribed for many crimes. Flogging. Flogging, also called wiping or caning or beating administered with a whip or wood, with blows commonly directed to the person's back. It was imposed as a form of judicial punishment as a means of maintaining discipline in schools, prisons, military forces, and private homes. During and quartering. During and quartering, part of the Gressly penalty, recently ordained in England for the crime the history of English law before the time of Edward state that it was more likely a way to deliver a live body to the hangman. The remain of the punishment might include hanging, usually leave disboiling, burning of the entrails, beheading, and quartering. This last step was sometimes accomplished by tying each of the four limbs to a different horse and squaring them in different directions. Exile and banishment. A sudden banishment prologue absence from one's country and expose vested authorities as punitive measure. It most likely originated among early civilization from the practice of designating an offender and outcast and depriving him the comfort and protection of his group. Exile was practiced by the Greeks chiefly in cases of homicide, although ostracism was a form of exile exposed for political reasons. In Rome, exile arose in means for circumventing the death penalty. Age of Enlightenment. The Age of Enlightenment, also known as the Age of Reason or simply the Enlightenment, was an intellectual philosophical movement that dominated Europe in the 17th and 18th centuries with global influences and effects. The Enlightenment included a range of ideas centered in the value of human happiness, the pursuit of knowledge obtained by means of reason, and the evidence of the things and ideals such as liberty programs, toleration, fraternity, constitutional government, and separation of church and state. Personalities and behind correctional institution. We have Caesar Vicaria in full. Caesar was celebrated volume in the form of criminal justice. Vicaria was son of Milenes. A high temperament resulted in reason of enthusiasm followed by depression and inactivity. He was reserved and somewhat taciturn in his social contact, was placed great value on his personal family relationship. At the age of 8, he was sent to the Jesuit school in Parma. In 1760, Beccaria proposed marriage to the 16-year-old Teresa Blasco, Marquess of Beccaria Bonecia, Italian economist and proponent of judicial reform. Caesar Beccaria was one author of the most famous Italian work of entitlement. On crimes and punishment, he was born into a notable family of the state of Milan, which was part of the Australian Habsburg Empire and was schooled by Jesuit in Parma. Cesar Lamborso, described as the father of modern criminology. Cesar Lamborso theory of the born criminal dominated thinking about criminal behavior in the late 19th and early 20th century. William the Conqueror. From 1035 and King of England was one of the greatest soldiers and rulers of the Middle Ages. He made himself the mightiest noble in France and then changed the course of England's history by his conquest country. Enrico Ferri was a research to him postulating curious calling for crime prevention methods to be mainstay of the law enforcement opposed to punishment criminals after their crimes taken place. He became a founder of the positivist school and he researched psychological and social positivists as opposed to the biological positivism of Lombardo. Clifford Shaw was an American sociologist and criminologist. He was a major figure in Chicago School of Sociology during the 1930s and 1940s, and is considered to be one of the most influential figures in American criminology. He worked on juvenile delinquency with Henry D. Mackay, conducted in the late 1920s, played a pivotal role in moving the study of such delinquency toward the discipline of sociology and away from psychology and psychiatry. So this is my sources. And that's all for today, and that's the end of my discussion. Once again, I am Rosalyn Pajulas. Thank you and God bless us all.